Hello? This is Fog and Ice. This little girl's pretty important, huh? He said after several minutes. There may be fighting, said Serafina Pecala, but you have fought before. And that's how you read it, huh? For the first time, the witch seemed unsure. That is how it seems, but we can't read the darkness, Mr. Scoresby. It is more than possible that I might be wrong. And what brought you into all this, if I can ask? Whatever they were doing at Bolivanger, we felt it was wrong with all our parts. Lyra is their enemy, so we are friends. We don't see more clearly than that, but also there is my clan's friendship for the Egyptian people, which goes back to the time when Father Coram saved my life. We're doing this at their bidding, and they have ties of obligation with Lord Asriel. They flew on. Because of the clouds below, there was no way of telling how fast they were going. Normally, of course, a balloon remains still with respect to the wind, floating at whatever speed the air itself was moving, but none pulled by the witches. The balloon was moving through the air instead of with it, and resisting the movement too, because the unwieldy gas bag had none of the streamlined smoothness of a Zeppelin. As a result, the basket swung this way and that, rocking and bumping much more than on a normal flight. Lee Scoresby wasn't concerned for his comfort so much as for his instruments, and he spent some of his time making sure they were securely lashed to the main struts. According to the altimeter, they were nearly 10,000 feet up. The temperature was minus 20 degrees. He had been colder than this, but not much, and he didn't want to get any colder now, so he unrolled the canvas sheet to use as emergency biovac and spread in front of the sleeping children to keep the wind off, before lying down back to back with his old comrade in arms, Eirik Björnsson, and falling asleep. The alethiometer, Lyra said. The Master of Jordan gave it to me, and I thought there was something he wanted to say about Lord Asriel, except he never had the chance. I knew he didn't really want to poison him. Is he going to read it and see how to make the bridge? I bet I could help him. I could probably read it as good as anyone now. Then Lyra said, Why do people have daemons, Serafina Pecla? Everyone asks that, and no one knows the answer. As long as there have been human beings, they have had daemons. It's what makes us different from animals. Yeah, we're different from them, all right. Like bears. They're strange, aren't they? Bears. You think they're like a person, and then suddenly they do something so strange or ferocious you think you'll never understand them. But you know what Eirik told me? He said that his armor for him was like what a daemon is for a person. It's his soul, he said. But that's where they're different again, because he made his armor himself. They took his first armor away when they sent him into exile, and he found some sky iron and made some new armor, like making a new soul. We can't make our daemons. Then the people at Trollesund, they got him drunk on spirits and stole it away. And I found out where it was, and he got it back. But what I wonder is, why is he coming to Svalbard? They'll fight him. They might kill him. I love Eirik. I love him so much I wish he wasn't coming. The witch called something in return, but again Lyra couldn't hear it. Roger was walking too. The creaking of the basket was enough to wake the deepest sleeper, never mind the rocking and bumping. Roger's daemon and pantaleimonium clung together like marmosets, and Lyra concentrated on lying still, not leaping up in fear. Come with us. You are a prisoner. Move now, quickly. Weary and scared, Lyra began to stumble over the harsh and slippery rocks, following the bear, wondering how she could talk her way out of this. So right away, from this story, one can infer two things I think that are interesting to talk about. The first is the nature of a balloon and a Zeppelin. How it was described. A balloon has trouble riding the currents of the wind, of the air, while a Zeppelin is more streamlined and can better navigate the atmosphere. This can be corroborated with the second part, which is talking kind of about, in this story, daemons and armor having something to do with a nature of one's soul. Now, no one knows what the soul is. There's no science that can tell you what the hell a soul is. There are people that believe in a soul. There are people that don't believe in a soul. I think this is a very interesting way of conceptualizing it, that, there are people in this story that have daemons that they are sort of born with, and they don't really control. They are kind of emanations of their emotions, kind of projections of their internal self and what they're feeling. They take on, if the person gets angry in this fantasy world, the daemon gets angry, and if a daemon attacks another daemon, then this kind of affects the person, so they're connected. But these bear creatures, they don't have daemons, but they have armor, which has pros and cons, right? Like Lyra says that the bears, like Iroh Bjornsson, created his own armor, but it seemingly was taken from him numerous times, and he had to get it back. Got him drunk, and they took his armor. So it's like you can take this armor away. So like the bears can create their own souls, but someone can just take it away from them if they're not careful. While the other people, I guess the human beings in this fantasy world, have these daemons that can be killed, which would kill the person, but you can't really take the daemon away. You can kind of control it, interestingly. So for the bears, they can create their own souls, but it's easily taken away. And with the human beings, they cannot. They are given souls as daemons. They cannot be taken away, but they can be killed or manipulated. And this really kind of references back to the balloon and Zeppelin thing, right? A balloon, you can guess, so like what's what, because there's a connection, I think, in this little story I'm making between a balloon and a Zeppelin and a bear's armor soul and a human's daemon soul. Which do you think is which? Well, let's think about it. A balloon can't ride the currents very well, right? And there's no protection from the cold. A Zeppelin is enclosed, very streamlined, can navigate the winds, but what's the nature of a Zeppelin, right? It needs a lot of fuel, right? It needs a big crew. Balloon is just one dude, navigating the balloon. So I'm going to say the balloon is the daemon. Reason is the manipulation, right? The wind kind of manipulates the balloon. The elements manipulate the people in the balloon. The balloon can just pop and you're done, right? A Zeppelin is kind of like the bears and their armor, right? The Zeppelin is plated, right? But what was the problem with the bear? It can just be taken away from the bear if they're not careful. They'd be tricked. They could just, be overcome in battle, and the armor could fail them. So a Zeppelin could run out of fuel. You cannot have a crew. If you don't have a crew, you can't even fly a Zeppelin. So interestingly, I see these parallels And of course, the little line about the alethiometer, the truth meter, um, similar to a soul. Nobody knows what the soul is. Everybody asks, "What's the soul?" Nobody knows. Um, but in a philosophical way, a soul is there's something truthful about a soul. People describe it so many ways, like so many religions have their own interpretation on what soul is, what its function is, but nobody knows what it is. So, it brings you to think about, you know, the nature of these daemons and how you can manipulate. And I think, and how do you relate this to our real life? It's a fantasy story, but how do you relate this to our real um, lives? Well, um, I would say that I mean, it goes into the nature of people. In my previous videos, about I'm creating a little story from a previous story. I told, or I spoke of, you don't want to be a shaman. You don't want to be your own shaman. Excuse me. You don't want to follow one of these influencers. So it's like the people that are so connected to their lives, right? They have this such a routine that they're almost, um, you know, like the people with demons in this fantasy novel, right? You know, their souls are easily manipulated by external forces such as you could say television, music, food, alcohol, drugs, illicit, non-illicit, family, friends, job, your home, all these, entertainment, everything, sports, everything that fills your life is manipulating you in some way to do something. What it is, it's like, well, you know, what's the agenda? Who knows? But then you have the bears, and they create their own souls with their armor. You got certain people out there that don't ascribe to this. They may have a day-to-day job, and they have several day-to-day jobs. But instead of just like going through the motion, they are actively creating their own story. Um, but the problem with this is it can very easily be taken away from you. This self, the armor, per se, right? It's you can you can very easily just fall. Maybe not fall, but maybe kind of slip into the kind of flow, and it's almost like for us, if you're a bear, your armor could almost become a daemon, right? It's almost like it's fluid, but if you're not one or the other, some people are going back and forth, right? It's a struggle, to be creating your own story or having it being created for you, essentially by what you fill your life with, going through the motions, you could say. Um, and and this is almost the nature, I think, of people. It's not simple as, oh, you're a leader or you're a follower, and that's nonsense. You're either somebody who creates their own story, or you're somebody who has their story dictated for them, and you're just going through the motions. And it's just the nature of how it is. And some people can go back and forth, like I said, and again, some of the very beginning lines that I read were like talking about Lyra being a fighter, right? So it's almost as if she's someone with a daemon. And in this story, if I recall, her daemon is like switching forms, and people in this fantasy reality, they're daemons, and eventually settle in a form. And this is even more indicative of people who are not creating their own story, right? Eventually, their story is like uh, done for them, and eventually they just kind of like settle into um, that life. And some people are like, oh, they have a midlife crisis, because it's like they're kind of like realizing that, like, well, I'm living this life, but it's not the life that I wanted to live, right? You could say about dreams, right? Um, Everyone's got a dream when they're younger, what they want to do with their lives. And there's always external circumstances, manipulative forces that prevent you from achieving your dream. You always ask a little kid what they want to be when they grow up, and they give great answers, like an astronaut, fireman, whatever, some businessman, lawyer. There's so many things, but very few people achieve that. And the people that do achieve that, they are the people that are creating their own story, right? Because they're resisting this flow. Maybe you have a family that full of doctors, but you want to be a chef, right? I've heard this story before, right? And your family rejects you because you want to be a chef, and you get no support, right? You have to like literally build it up from the base of the base, and dash your way up the ladder, and and achieve what you want to achieve. And I think that a lot of people, they just it's hard. It's very hard. I think no one can say that they are fully a bear with their own armor, creating their own soul, creating their own story. It's very hard. And I think in the novel, the bears are few and far between, or they're not very well thought of, or they're kind of on the outside. Um, so uh, there's that to consider, and it's just yeah, try to fight, like Lyra, you know, in the beginning of that new story I created, and be a balloon. No, excuse me, be a Zeppelin. Excuse me. Balloons are people with daemons, right? Um, Balloons look very nice in the sky. They're beautiful. Uh, it's almost like scenic with a balloon, right? It's like people that have these daemons. They're almost on this scenic drive through life, and you might say that's the way to go, right? But if you're on a scenic drive, most likely you're gonna get lost. You know, you're gonna veer from the path that is trying to get you to your destination. You're gonna wind up in Wyoming if you started in South Carolina, and you'll be like, how did I get here? And you know, it's just, you could argue that, oh, it's the journey of life, and it takes you where you want, but don't let life take you. You take yourself, right? You take yourself through your life. Don't let life just toss you around through the oceans of reality, and let you wind up in, like, Hawaii. That sounds pretty good, right? But you know did you want to go to Hawaii, right? Or is that where your friends wanted to go, your family wanted to go, right? And a lot of people that they've lived in Hawaii, it's not all that, right? And it's very touristy, right? Better or for worse. It's an island. It's very remote. I mean, there's pros and cons of Hawaii. You can't just be like Hawaii is like that's the most perfect place. Not for everyone. It's hot there, right? It's tropical. There's a lot of storms, a lot of rain coming. So maybe you like the snow. Maybe you like colder weather. You like to ski. You like to have a little fire in your house. I mean, people are different. Excuse me. So, like, be someone, again, the reiteration of what I'm saying here, what I've been saying in previous videos, is be your own person. You know, uh, create your own story. Don't let someone else create it for you. And, get tossed around in the currents of the air like a balloon, freeze your ass off, run out of fuel, have it pop, get blown who knows where. Be a Zeppelin, right? Be the captain of your own Zeppelin, right? Determine your own destiny. Excuse me. So there's some philosophical things to think about.